What does it take for Joyce Manor to say no to a show?
Oh,
Have you ever hung out with someone for the first time and become best friends within a matter of hours? I can honestly say that has never happened to me with a person, but it did happen with Joyce Manor, an American rock band formed in 2008 hailing from Torrance, California, which is about 45 minutes away from LA. The first time I listened to Joyce Manor, I was a ripe, saucy 16-year-old in the middle of high school. Hormones were raging, nothing made sense, and I was beginning to discover this style of music that would eventually ruin my life. I can vividly remember hearing their song Julius for the first time and being completely entranced by the crashing guitars and raspy, shouted vocals. I had never heard something so short, fast, catchy, and emotionally heavy. I immediately had to replay the song, this time reading along with the lyrics. It felt so good to fall in love with something so new, so fast. It took me maybe all of 5 minutes to fall head over heels for this group, and I can honestly say I still feel the same way.
And he's like, oh, what's it called? And I was just like, Joyce Manor.
Today we're going to take a closer look at Joyce Manor. We'll assess their progression as a band, try to figure out what makes a Joyce Manor song so good, and lastly, what I think the future holds for them. First and foremost, if you've never heard of Joyce Manor, I want to bring everyone up to speed on the history of the band. And don't worry, this will be like the Cliff Notes version. I know we all have things to do, like cleaning the carpet. A lot of people don't know this, but Joyce Manor actually began as an acoustic duo featuring Barry Johnson and Chase Kenobi. According to multiple sources, the boys actually got the idea to make music together while drunk during a visit to Disneyland. From that moment on, they joined forces and are still making music together to this day, with the rest of the band, of course. As time went on, Barry and the boys released some splits and some demos before inking a deal with 6131 Records and putting out their critically acclaimed self-titled album. And from that point on, it was on and cracking. These guys have been going non-stop since the early 2010s, and I have no idea how they do it. For album number 2, Joyce decided to go with Asian Man Records and Big Scary Monsters, a UK label, to put out their second LP, Of All Things, I Will Soon Grow Tired, which is arguably the weakest and most underwhelming in their catalog. I don't have any hatred for it, I just don't love it. And then they hopped labels for the final time when they released Never Hungover Again by signing to Epitaph Records, the label that they're still on to this day. In 2016, Joyce Manor would release Cody via Epitaph, which would be album number 4, and following Cody would be their 2018 effort, $1 Million to Kill Me, which I thought was alright, but I think the album name is the best part about that record, to be honest. The band today currently consists of Barry Johnson, Matt Ebert, also known as that guy from the Never Hungover Again album cover, Chase Kenobi, and their new drummer, Pat Ware. The name Joyce Manor was put on the table by Barry. It was the name of an apartment building by his house, and he thought it sounded cool, so it stuck. And that's the very abridged version of their history. If you want a more detailed write-up about some of the band's history, they actually have an About section on their website that I'll link below. One of the most interesting things about Joyce Manor is their progression as a band. Many groups in their lane make a couple records that sound virtually the same and then call it quits. I was actually thinking to myself the other day how crazy it is that Joyce Manor is still together and still going strong with 5 albums out. Your average pop punk or emo band just doesn't last that long, but Joyce is now going on 12 years, and on top of that, they've managed to keep people very interested, and all of their records for the most part have been well received. Throughout their catalog, Barry and friends toy with the genres punk, pop punk, and emo consistently throughout, but what makes each record unique and interesting is their ever-changing take on those genres. And that's a huge reason why I respect this band so much. They've set these parameters for themselves to work under in terms of genre, they stick to it, and are rewarded with an interesting result. Even their work that I don't care for as much, I still enjoy, and I'm glad they tried an idea. Comparing their first album to their most recent is interesting because a lot has changed, but on the same token, many aspects remain unchanged. $1 Million to Kill Me is the standard Joyce Manor length, around 20 minutes. Most songs don't cross the 2-minute mark, and everything still has that short and concise feeling, only saying what's absolutely necessary. The main differences between album 1 and $1 Million are of course the production, and the fact that $1 Million showcases the many sides of Joyce Manor. The record opens high energy as usual with Fighting Kangaroo, followed by alternative punk banger I'm Still in Love with You, and then we arrive at Big Lie, which feels like it could easily be a Never Hungover Again B-side. The closer Wildflowers is a bright mid-tempo burner displaying the slower, softer part of their sound, and see that's the thing, my main issue with $1 $1 million is that each facet of their sound that's displayed on here feels like a weaker version of something they've done before. You can still feel that Joyce Manor charm peeking through on many cuts, it just feels a little watered down, like when the ice in your Kool-Aid melts and then it doesn't taste as good. When a band has so many records out, it can be kind of intimidating in terms of where to start when it comes to a band's catalog. So I'm gonna give you this chart thing with lines on it and a small description of each album to help you get started. So for me, their self-titled would be all the way up here. It's Joyce Manor at their absolute best, and it sounds like listening to your friend's pop-punk/emo band practice in the garage. The production is so raw on this thing. Of all things, I Will Soon Grow Tired falls down here for me. It's like the less focused, messier version of self-titled. It's really short, like 13 minutes or something, but somehow almost feels longer than self-titled. Never Hungover Again jumps back up here to where self-titled is. This record feels like the more produced, progressed version of self-titled with new ideas on the table and a new label backing them up. It's my personal favorite by them, just barely surpassing self-titled. Cody is somewhere in between because it's an album that I really like and that's growing on me, but it doesn't quite strike me in the same way as Never Hungover Again or self-titled. Think of it like this. Cody is basically the album where Joyce Manor grew up. Their sound feels more defined and polished than ever with a heavier focus on melody. And now we arrive at $1 million to Kill Me, which is right below Cody, but above all things. It just feels like it's kind of there. It's not that good, but it's not that bad. I was a little disappointed, but I wouldn't call it a bad album per se. Now, in order to make a good Joyce Manor song, you have to have all of the ingredients. It's like baking a cake. If you're missing the eggs, it'll be whack. I like to think of a Joyce Manor song as confetti cake batter cookies because those also take just 4 ingredients to make. First and foremost, you need Barry Johnson's extremely distinguishable screams and shouts. I feel like I may get some naysayers on this one, but I think Barry has an extremely unique voice in punk, and I'd find it easy to pick him out in a crowd of similar performers. I like to think of him as the Jerry Seinfeld of punk. Next, you need some relatable, to-the-point lyrics that convey exactly what's necessary and nothing more or less. My favorite example of this would have to be the opening line on Christmas Card, "Looking at your face in the dark, you don't even look that smart." In 13 words, Barry has me back in my awkward teenage years, remembering how I'd try to convince myself that I didn't like a girl, even though I did, I think as a coping mechanism to not get hurt or something. But somehow, someway, Barry was able to tap into such a specific, almost nostalgic feeling in less than 15 words. And that right there is the magic of a Joyce Manor song. Third ingredient you need to make a good Joyce Manor song is brevity. It has to be short. I have found that they seem to be at their best when writing tracks under the 2-minute mark. The brief nature of many of their songs works well to complement the often sparse lyrics. And the final ingredient is, it has to be catchy, which I know sounds obvious, but hear me out. Certain bands have different appeal, right? Some groups draw you in with really technical guitar work or the most intricate, beautiful melodies, and that's the thing, every group is different. But for Joyce Manor, the selling point is, it's catchy, it's to the point, it gets stuck in your head, and it makes you feel something. Usually sad. And I know this may sound crazy, but I think Joyce Manor could do this forever if they wanted to. I think they could be a band till the end of time and still have excited fans coming to their shows. And the reason for this is, over the years, they've been able to build up this crazy dedicated following in the punk, pop-punk, emo, and even indie scene and have stuck to those genres, only changing the ways in which they weave them together. And because of this, their fan base is that much stronger. People hope and depend on Joyce Manor. They're one of the few bands that you'll never have to worry about. They're never going to try to become the next big thing in shoegaze or attempt to be something they're not. They know who they are, embrace it as hard as possible, and they're championed for it. At no point in their career have they attempted to sell out or change the way they behave so people would like them more. They've been themselves since day one and still are. Sure, they signed to a major label, but that hasn't impacted their sound or who they are as people. Sometimes it's hard to know what a band is really like, what their true intentions are, because words only carry so much weight in the grand scheme of things. It's not what you say, it's what you do. And after watching these guys do their thing for the better part of 8 years now, it's clear that they're the real deal. Just some bona fide DIY punk kids from Southern California that happen to make their dreams become a reality. And as long as they're around, I'll be there to cheer them on. Thank you for watching.